What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. Tremendous episode lined up for you here today. We have our good friend from ESPN, Louis Riddick, back here on the Next Pats podcast to talk about Maye and what he saw on Sunday and what he expects moving forward. Absolutely love having Louis on the podcast. Not only is he one of the best media guys around, but you get that player perspective from Louis. You also get that front office perspective from Louis. So we have a great chat lined up with Louis. We will get to that in just a moment. But first, because you deserve it, people. You deserve it. We're going 10 reasons to feel optimistic about the Patriots' future moving forward after Drake Maye's first professional start. It's been a long haul to get to this point, I feel. Yes, we had blips where we felt encouraged by what we saw from Mac Jones and his ability even before the draft and how that might mesh with the Patriots, and it did, briefly, but not for long. It's been a while since you had this level of hope. And you should tap into that. You should embrace that. It's okay to feel that way, even after a 20-point loss. So here are your 10 reasons for optimism. Let's start with number 1. Drake Maye showed some toughness on Sunday. Took 8 quarterback hits total, including 4 sacks. A couple of them might have struck a little bit of fear into your hearts because you weren't sure he was going to get up, but he did, and he got back to the huddle, and he continued to encourage his teammates. That spoke to them. That should speak to you too. He actually spoke to me at the Combine when I asked him about showing toughness and how important that was for him while at the University of North Carolina. I found his answer really interesting, and I think it could give us a window into what he truly values playing the position he does. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think that's one of the toughest things, showing as a quarterback, you're not touching practice. People think that you don't lift as hard because you're not, barbell benching, and people kind of call you out for it. So the biggest thing for me was, running. I think, sometimes I hurdled or try to break tackles, and some of the hurdle stuff I need to, shy away from to stay healthy. But I think at the same time it shows someone competing. One of the kind of the best, impacts I felt like I had was, after, I ran for first down and made somebody miss or try to hurdle a guy. Those guys love that, and that was kind of my way.
Now that audio back in February at the Combine in Indianapolis, I think tells you who he is as a player. He's a football player. Yes, he happens to play quarterback, but he wants to show, it's important to him to show that he is tough and that he can speak to his teammates in that way. Reason number 2, Drake Maye's mobility is real. Is it spectacular? I would say verging on it, at least for this Patriots offense. By my count, the Patriots averaged 8.5 yards per play when Drake Maye went off script. That's both with his legs. They didn't have a single designed run, so all of his 38 yards that he picked up on the ground were by scramble situations, and through the air, the 30-yard completion of Hunter Henry being the big one there. That mobility, to me, is really going to be what buys him time, not only in real time, not only on the field, but in terms of his overall development. And when it comes to the big picture, as he's looking for sustained drives, as he's looking for any brief spurts of success to build upon, to give him a little bit of confidence to move forward, understanding that what he's doing can work, that mobility is going to be absolutely critical to helping himself and helping his teammates, which we'll get to moving forward. Number 3, the downfield accuracy. We know the Patriots have struggled mightily to be able to push the ball down the field. You heard Kayshon Boutte talk about it after the game. We need to get more aggressive. When we get aggressive, we can move the football. They had a hell of a time trying to find deep completions with Jacoby Brissett back at quarterback through the first 5 weeks of the season. Drake Maye on that 40-yard touchdown to Kayshon Boutte. In terms of air yards, in terms of how far that football traveled from Drake Maye's hand to Kayshon Boutte's, over 50 yards in the air. That's the longest completion, according to Next Gen Stats, that the Patriots have had in 3 years. He showed it at North Carolina. He's already starting to show it here as a pro. Number 4, reason to be optimistic about the future with Drake Maye, the anticipation we saw from him on Sunday. Not only was it the Pop Douglas 35-yard touchdown pass, which to me also showed some in-game improvement that I think has to be viewed as encouraging for Patriots fans and for the Patriots themselves, because he missed on that throw, essentially the same throw, twice earlier in that game. But how about the anticipation throw on an incompletion during the 2-minute drill to Jalen Polk? Sort of a deep comeback down the right side of the field, throws that thing before Polk is out of his break. His back is turned to Drake Maye, but Drake Maye knows where he's supposed to be, and when he lets it rip, shows off the arm, hits Jalen Polk in the hands, and it's dropped. That's another issue entirely, and we will get to that in the future on the next Bats podcast here. But the ability to make those anticipatory connections or put the Patriots in position to make those anticipatory connections, to me, is a huge factor given what we had seen through the first month plus of the season with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Took a little longer for the football to come out. I think Jacoby Brissett was just more comfortable because of maybe some lack of trust with his receivers or maybe with his offensive line. It just felt as though it needed to be seen open before it was thrown. With Drake Maye, there's a little risk tolerance there, baby. He is happy to pull the trigger into traffic when his receiver's not looking, and that to me could help give them a little bit more of an edge moving forward offensively. How about the ability to read things out? That's number 5 for us here. Go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 on the 22-yard catch and run to Pop Douglas that really sparked that 2-minute drive that culminated in the Booty touchdown. All the way from one side, it looked like he was facing some cover 6, so quarter, half. He has a combination on the left side where there's sort of a quick out and there's a corner route. Then back to the middle, Jalen Polk is almost triple teamed. We went over this play on the breakdown with Ted Johnson. He and I were stunned by how much attention Jalen Polk got in this game, quite frankly, from the Houston Texans. But he's almost triple teamed over the middle of the field. So then he gets all the way to his 4th option is in his progression, and it's Pop Douglas in the flat running a little, almost like a little return route to the outside, an arrow route, a quick out. And man, he makes that throw despite being flat-footed and taking a hit. So again, showing off some of that toughness, showing off that arm strength, which we knew he had, but the ability to make those reads and the ability to think through the game has to make you optimistic moving forward. All of those things combined lead us to number 6, the ability to elevate the players around him. That mobility, helping the offensive line, save some sacks when it comes to their sheet at the end of a game. Help that offensive line when it comes to stepping up in the pocket and keeping plays alive in that way if the edge pressure is starting to win. Help your receivers by scrambling around. Give them more time and space out as they're operating in the secondary to be able to separate. They've had their issues in that regard this season. And when you're behind the line of scrimmage for 4.5, 5 seconds, that makes it incredibly difficult for opposing defenses to be able to plaster and stick with those guys. So you're helping your receivers in that way. And again, I come back to the toughness piece and some of the intangible things that Drake Maye showed. If you don't think that helps your teammates get motivated, if you don't think that elevates your teammates, you're discounting the human element of this game, which I think is starting to happen a little bit more and more frequently as we all get smarter tracking the game and tracking the numbers specifically and looking at the X's and O's. I think we do lose out on the fact at times, and we talked about this as it related to when do you get Drake Maye in there? Is it okay to continue to sit him? A lot of bright people who felt as though they should, and I get those reasons why. But boy, you're discounting the human emotion of all 52 other guys in that locker room, of everybody on that coaching staff, of everyone in football operations, period, by saying, no, we're just going to actually take care of this one guy. You guys can all go screw for another couple weeks. You can't do that. It's an emotional game. And I believe, based on what Pop Douglas told us after the fact, I'd run through a wall for that guy, that sort of emotional intangible that Drake Maye brings to the table helped elevate his teammates. Or at least it should help elevate his teammates moving forward. How about specifically Pop Douglas? There's that name again. The chemistry with Pop. Behind the scenes, I know. I talked to Pop Douglas about this many times over the course of the season. Those guys worked a lot after practice. So they got their reps in practice, 30% of the starter reps until he became the starter. Then after practice, they got even more work in. So to be able to allow your most talented receiver, when it comes to quickness, yards after the catch, to be able to allow him to develop with you moving forward, that to me, that 90-yard game, you're not going to see 90 yards every week from Pop Douglas, but it wasn't a fluke. Their connection was no fluke because the work had been put in. And where this had been at times a very disappointing season for Pop Douglas and a very unproductive season at times for Pop Douglas, that's going to improve moving forward. Another reason for optimism there. How about poise? Just pure poise. This to me is a little bit different from toughness, and it was a little sketchy early in the game, right? First throw basically goes into the Patriots bench, which is like 10 yards off the sideline. Not even close. It looked like a throwaway, but I'm not really sure why it was a throwaway. He really wasn't pressured. It was almost as soon as he caught it, he just decided he was going to fire it into the first row. The interception is an obvious example of what you might term a lack of poise because he's just so juiced. He's so amped. There's so much adrenaline running through his veins that he has no control over the football. You hope that gets better moving forward. But I thought as the game went on, he was able to remain poised despite the hits and despite the mistakes that he made. We've seen it in the past here. You can go into the tank pretty quickly. You start to turn the football over. He didn't do that. That, to me, has to be a reason for optimism for Patriots fans. And to me, it speaks to what Kendrick Bourne was saying after the game when he said Drake Maye has aura. Not everybody has that. For a guy who just turned 22 years old to be able to exhibit that to veteran teammates, that, to me, again, reason for optimism. Two more here. Very simple. One of them is just hope, specifically hope, not for you listening, although hopefully you have some of that right now that you didn't have at this time last week. But hope in that locker room. That was about as light as a post-loss locker room as I've ever seen in New England. Now, the defense was not happy with itself, rightfully so. Totally understand that. Offensively, there's a spark there. There's energy there. There's juice there. They know they have a special talent. They knew they had a player who just had reached 200 yards passing, which was the first time a quarterback had hit that figure against that vaunted Texans defense to this point in the season. So there's real juice. There's real energy. There's all that extra stuff that's associated with bringing Drake Maye onto the field and allowing him to show what he can do. Not every game is going to look like that, is my guess. And you might say, he turned it over 3 times. Is that what you're looking for? I would look at the fumble as a function of his protection. I would look at the second pick as a function of his protection. It looks like Zach Thomas doesn't really know how to cut block a tackle. I don't necessarily blame him. He's a guard. My guess is it's a little bit different. I don't know all the ins and outs of offensive line play and tackle play in particular when it comes to making those kinds of plays. But those are two that I don't want to immediately wipe off the board for Maye, but I don't look at them as entirely his fault either. But an extremely productive game otherwise against a good defense. Still, they're not all going to look like that. You are still going to have hope moving forward because of what this team and the players around him know he can do. The last one is perspective. And maybe I'm putting too much on his post-game press conference, but I love reading into post-game press conferences and just how different people handle them, whether it's coaches or players. And I thought Drake Maye really handled himself the right way after a 20-point loss. He was down. He was not psyched about his performance, even though I think there were some others in the locker room. I know there were some others in the locker room who were, but he's the quarterback. He has to wear that L, and I thought he wore it appropriately. I thought he criticized himself and the team's performance when needed. I thought he also acknowledged at times that there were positives. And so perspective is reason number 10 for optimism moving forward, as in your quarterback has it, and he's going to need it. He's going to need to embrace both the successes and the failures that come along with this rookie path that he is now traveling if he wants to leave year one better than how he entered it. So to me, all the sound from after the game, and it's easy to find, you can hear it in his voice that he's pained by the loss, but you also hear glimmers of hope that he has for this offense and for himself moving forward. And I think that's incredibly valuable. So there are your 10 reasons for optimism after Drake Maye's first start. You deserve it. It's been a long road. Soak it up. Enjoy the moment. There are going to be plenty of painful ones moving forward. Hopefully not physically painful for Drake Maye. We'd like to see him play the remainder of these Patriots games so we have as much intel as humanly possible on the guy who is going to mean the most for this franchise moving forward, more than any other individual for the next 3, 4, 5, more than that years. Now, don't get me wrong. The Patriots showed that they still have plenty of issues in that loss to the Texans. Turnovers, coaching, as in what's going on with the penalties. Start the game with another penalty on the kickoff. That's the second time this year that's happened. Pass interference penalties on third down. I know one was ticky-tack, but extending drives, giving the Texans points. One of the best teams in football. You just can't afford to do that if you want to try to keep the game close, and they're lucky the game was as close as it was at halftime because there was another third down penalty on Dietrich Wise that eventually culminated in a missed field goal by the Texans, but those are the types of things you just can't have. 7 penalties in the first half alone. Inexcusable. How about the run defense? I know they have injuries. I know they have people out. They should be able to do better than what they did on Sunday. Yes, all of those things need to be ironed out. But right now, at least, to focus on those as opposed to what you saw from Drake Maye, to me, would be missing the forest for the trees. This is a quarterback league, and the Patriots have one. All right, let's get to our interview with Louis Riddick. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. And just to give you a little sneak peek as to how he feels about the Drake Maye situation and when Drake Maye should have played. We're going to get to this in our conversation, but he's been saying since August Drake Maye should be on the field. It's basically Louis Riddick and Scott Zolak. I think those are the only two people that I know who are talking about get this guy on the field now. Now, it's for different reasons. Zoe was more so, listen, he's the 3rd overall pick. You got to get him out there. What are you doing waiting around? I know Zoe believes that you develop by playing. Louis Riddick's going to tell you why he felt like it should come a little bit earlier, but it was really about Maye's makeup specifically and what he knew and what he sensed from Drake Maye, having spent some time around him at North Carolina even prior to the draft and watching him on tape. What spoke to Louis Riddick about Drake Maye's game and why he'd be able to handle even a bad situation for a young quarterback early in his career. But here's his tweet following the Texans game. Starting Drake Maye against the Texans didn't permanently ruin the young man and result in the instantaneous demise of the Patriots organization, ... I was worried. Rolling eyes emoji. Not. Kid is a stud. Just needs help around him. A lot of it, too. So, we're going to get into that with Louis Riddick, why he feels the way he does about Drake Maye, what impressed him most about Drake Maye, and why he's uniquely wired for this situation. Here's Louis. There he is. There's our friend Louis Riddick from ESPN. Louis, we just got finished talking a little bit about Drake Maye and all the different things we saw from him in his first start. The downfield accuracy, obviously, the anticipation at times, the toughness. What was it, though, for you that impressed you most about the rookie's first start?
Yeah, I think, obviously, how you're able to bounce back and continue to play with courage, poise, toughness, trying to execute the offense in the vision that, that Coach Van Pelt has laid out, especially if it doesn't start off great, which it didn't, and it wasn't smooth throughout the entire game, but he was able to continue to try to build upon the play that had happened before him. I think that is something that is oftentimes taken for granted when it comes to quarterbacks, and something that's oftentimes assumed that that's what you're supposed to be able to do as a professional. You're supposed to be like a robot. You're supposed to be able to take adversity, put it in its own little box, and then, tap into your wonderful physical skills and always play at a high level. That we know that's not the case. We know that quarterbacks in particular can be very, very affected by not having success, by getting hit, by it looking as though that they're ice skating uphill, so to speak. And I think that's what a lot of people were concerned about with Drake, right? I mean, I had people specifically say, are you sure you want to have him have his first start against the Houston Texans like they were the 85 Bears, like they were going to knock him out of football and he was going to be forever ruined and the Patriots were going to never be the same again? This kid is uniquely, I believe, wired in such a way that he understands that it's not going to all be perfect on his own accord, let alone what is surrounding him. And I'm not saying he's going to throw people under the bus, but it's not perfect yet. The offensive line is not good enough yet. The wide receiver core is not good enough and consistent enough yet. We understand that. His relationship with Alex Van Pelt is not to the point where all of a sudden now they know each other in every situation to where Alex can always dial up the kind of things that make Drake feel comfortable, as if this is Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady in year 15. It's not, but see, that's kind of like how he was talked about. Like, if it's not at that level right away, then you can't put him in there. And it was never going to be like that. But he showed you he's ready for the challenge. And I don't think that it's going to always look pretty. He may have very bad games here over the course of the season. I would bet that he's going to. And this conversation is going to ramp up again. But I think as long as he understands and keeps it in context, and the people around him keep it in context, he's going to be just fine. And he's going to come out of this better, to the point where he's going to be so damn far ahead when it all is kind of settled around him, that you're going to have something real, real special with him, meaning one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
I want to dig into this further with you because I know you're passionate about it. We read your tweet that you sent out after the game on Sunday before we jumped on with you here. He was not broken. You don't have to worry about his health. You don't have to worry about his NFL future after one start against, yes, a good pass rush, but he is okay. He made it through. But why do you say, Louis, that he's uniquely wired to handle this stuff? I'm curious about that because I know you spoke to him at North Carolina during his pro day. Is it that time that you spent with him? Is it your study of him during his days in college? What is it that makes him uniquely wired, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's that. It's talking to the people down in Chapel Hill about him. It's talking to people who scouted him and did work on him in the pre-draft process. And yeah, individually, it's about my perception of him in the time I got to talk to him, and his ability to be realistic about where he is relative to where he wants to go, and how he's willing to embrace that journey and not be deterred by what is obviously going to be some rocky road and some rocky lumps. There are people, and they are well documented, especially at the quarterback position, who, if you would have talked to them in the beginning, before it got rocky for them, you would have been like, I'm not quite so sure how this guy's going to handle it when it's not going perfect for him. You would have been able to kind of like come to the conclusion that this could go either way with him. I never got the impression that with Drake Maye, it was like, well, I think you better make sure that everything is perfect for this dude, because I'm not quite sure how he is wired. And the people who I've talked to aren't quite sure how he is wired relative to his ability to handle adversity. And on top of it, let me take it a step further. That once he does, okay, so he has a decent game, right? He has a decent game against a very tough physical defense that knocked him around a couple times, put him on the ground a few times where you're sitting there going, shit, how's he going to get up from that? How's he going to respond to that? How's he going to look after that hit? He had players, namely C.J. Stroud, kind of looking at him going, yeah, that guy's got it. There's something about him. That guy's got something special to him. Going up to him and talking to him about and seeking him out, saying, hey, look, and I don't know what C.J. Stroud shared with him. I just know this. I just know that C.J. Stroud was probably looked at last year when he came out in the draft. Well, I know he was looked at as being the guy who was supposed to be inferior to Bryce Young in terms of his makeup and his ability to like elevate people around him to the level that he did. Remember, he was supposed to be the guy who benefited from Ohio State just being loaded. That's what he benefited from. It was never going to be the same once he got to the Texans. They were devoid of talent. He wasn't going to be able to, but talking to Brian Hartline and the people out at Ohio State and talking to the young man, you got the sense that he had a much better awareness about where he was at and what he needed to do to get to where he wanted to get to. And I got that same feeling with Drake Maye. The same feeling. Because watching his tape last year, I can tell you this. I was like, he's going to take a little work. He's not quite as ready as Jaden. He's not quite as ready as Caleb. I think he's going to, and that's why like the narrative and all the all the talk around him was he needs time. He needs to sit and watch. He needs to learn from Jacoby. They need to take it a little bit slower with him. The first time I saw him throw the football, the first time I saw him play in the preseason, and the way in which that offense sparked as soon as he got in there, And you saw how people all of a sudden looked a little bit faster. The protection looked a little bit better. Backs ran a little bit harder. That's something you can't necessarily measure and quantify. The effect that a guy like that has on his teammates. I saw that instantly. I think you're going to see that as the year goes on. And that's not a knock against Jacoby. That's just giving it to Drake and giving him his flowers, so to speak, this early on and saying, I think you got something different here. And I'm very confident in that.
It's really interesting because there are obviously two schools of thought where, the Patriots and the Patriots front office felt as though, okay, let's let him rest or let's let him sit and watch. Let's let him try to learn and develop behind the scenes. Our situation isn't great right now. And he also needs some development before we feel comfortable putting him out there. I know you were saying all the way back in August, play this guy. What I want to ask you now, Louis, is there were a couple of plays in that game the other day where he's winning from the pocket and he's making like full field reads, or he's pumping and he's baiting a corner and then he's throwing over his head. Like, I look at those, I'm sure he had plays like that on his college tape, but I'm wondering, okay, are those the kinds of plays that maybe we're seeing now that we wouldn't have seen had he started week one?
Maybe.
Do you feel like that's possible, or do you look at it and say, man, they just kind of threw away a season? They could have got this guy ready for week one, started him week one, and maybe not been 1-5 right now. Like, how do you feel about it now after seeing that first performance?
Yeah. It's hard to know, but that's a great question. It's hard to know. Alex Van Pelt, Drake Maye, they probably know. They know whether or not he would have been capable of doing that week one as opposed to now. Maybe he had shown flashes. Look, I'm sure he showed them flashes of what you got, in spurts on Sunday. Like, I can remember going back in, like I said, after that first preseason game, I can remember going back to and listening to Gerard talk to him and talk about him before preseason even started. And I get the sense that they really felt as though this was somebody who this could wind up, his maturation and his development can wind up happening much faster than maybe what they even previously thought. And it's hard to know. Look, you're dealing with human beings who have never been in your structure and your culture before. So you don't know how they're going to download it and how they're going to be able to use it. You just don't know until they start doing it. You have a real good idea about it, but you don't know about the speed with which it's going to happen. I can remember talking to Brett Veach about Patrick Mahomes about this when they got him in-house in Kansas City. Right from the get-go, they were like, whoa, wait a minute. This guy is doing stuff that, like, are you kidding me? They had to sit on their hands his rookie year and leave Alex Smith in there because he had come along much faster than they even thought he would. And now look at him. Now he's the standard by which all quarterbacks are judged. I'm not saying that that's going to be Drake Maye's eventual, career arc, but I'm saying I'm sure he caught some people by surprise with how quickly he downloaded all the information that was being given to him and how then he could use it. I don't know if he was using it to this degree before Sunday, but I don't really think it even matters, really, at this point. I think being realistic about the Patriots, I think we know what they still need to work on and what they still need to improve upon in order for them to get back to anywhere close to where they used to be. But he is something that you can hang your hat on, and you need to protect that at all costs and develop that at all costs. And I don't say at all costs, develop it. You want to protect him and make sure you don't mess this up. And I don't think by playing him, you were risking messing it up. I don't think he's fragile like that. I don't think he would get, lose his confidence in such a manner like many people were fearing that he would if it didn't go right. And on top of it, he's pretty damn good. And he makes other people around him pretty good too. So let's just, instead of always worrying, you know how that conversation goes with quarterbacks now. It's fun, certain conversations with quarterbacks kind of just take on a life of their own. If it's not perfect around him as a young quarterback, sit him down, make him wait, and then he'll be much better and he'll hit the ground running. That's not always the case. It's just not always the case that kind of thing is going to happen like that. Just like it's not the case that no running back should be taken in the first round, that you can always find another wide receiver, that offensive guards are a dime a dozen, that you don't need inside linebackers, a lot of that stuff, people need to kind of reset and kind of control-alt-delete their brain when it comes to football sometimes, because what we always thought was the case is not the case in today's game. People evolve, players evolve, And Drake Maye is one of those dudes who clearly is evolving and growing right before our eyes. And I'd be excited as hell if I'm a Patriot fan.
We got a lot of excited Patriots fans here right now. And your example, your story about talking to Brett Veach on Patrick Mahomes is interesting to me and resonating with me now, because I remember talking to Alex Van Pelt during training camp and hearing from some others behind the scenes there. They were surprised when he got there, because a lot of people viewed him. I don't think they necessarily viewed him this way, but a lot of people viewed him as sort of this playground style quarterback, working off script and rolling around and trying to make plays because the situation around him wasn't great at North Carolina. They were surprised by how quickly he could play from the pocket and go from 1 to 2 to 3, and how quickly he was going through those reads in a new offense, under center at times. Like, it was surprising to them. And so I think we're seeing some of the fruits of his labors when it comes to that sort of quarterback play behind the scenes.
Give Alex Van Pelt some credit, right? Alex was a pretty damn good quarterback at Pitt. He was my quarterback. I played with him. I know how good he was. And he was taught by some real good people. And I think, and that's not to take anything away from what Drake was taught or wasn't taught at North Carolina, and how the situation changed for him from 1 year to the next, which it did down at North Carolina in terms of weapons that he had around him. And sometimes guys try to make up for what they don't have by doing things that they shouldn't do in the name of trying to win football games and move the football. And maybe Drake was a victim of that. I mean, that's something you'd have to ask him. Like, actually, like, how did that affect you? You know, what exactly did contribute to your development or lack thereof from 1 year to the next at North Carolina? And what's contributing to it now? How has Alex Van Pelt helped you? How has his teaching progression helped you? From the very first day you walked into the building, how has he helped you? How has Coach Mayo helped you become the player that now, as you just said, is making people go, I didn't expect that? Well, that's because we aren't privy to a lot of the things that he's being exposed to on a day in, day out, minute by minute basis inside that building. And I would bet that a lot of it, I know a lot of it has to do with why he is ascending the way he is, because it's resonating with him in some way. So if Alex Van Pelt had the time, or if he was even inclined to sit and tell you, like, this is how we've tried to help him, this is what has downloaded into him the quickest, in the way in which we kind of connected with him quickly, that would be a fascinating discussion to have, because he's striking the right notes based off of one game. And I know there's going to be people who are going to jump all over it and say it's one game. Just like he's not going to be an all-pro in one game, it takes a little bit more than one game to break a guy. So there's going to be people like now sitting around going, you know what? I don't want to look like a fool. So I sure do hope he struggles. I hope he has some issues, because I thought he would have issues, and now I don't want to see him do good. That's the weird thing about quarterbacks, man. People hate being wrong about their initial assessment, but there's so many things, Phil. There's so many things that go into it. Look, I didn't know for sure how it would go, but based on how I felt about watching him, then seeing him in person right next to him and watching him throw, interviewing him on TV for ACC Network and ESPN, and then watching him go through the preseason, I was like, play this dude. Don't sit on him. He makes the team play better. Play him. He's going to take some hits. He's not made of glass. He'll be okay. Play him. I'm just glad that they put him in there finally. I'm just waiting to see what the next couple of weeks hold. I'm excited.
Well, again, a lot of people here are excited too, because it looks like they have a quarterback. There's some real hope here now that there hasn't been for a few years. Louis Riddick, thank you so much for being with us, spending some time with us. You are everywhere. You're going down to Atlanta. You're covering Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Then Monday night, you've got Chargers, Cardinals. So you've got a lot of work to do. We truly appreciate the time you're spending with us here on Next Pats to talk some Drake Maye. You're the best.
You bet. Thank you.
Great stuff there from the great Louis Riddick. The man is everywhere. One of the busiest people in media. So we really appreciate having him on. We appreciate you all for listening. We appreciate Casey Keene for helping put this thing together. We appreciate John the Skull Crusher Henry, as always. And please, 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 if you could, take a second, rate, comment, subscribe, leave us a comment on YouTube as well. The comment section on the YouTube videos has been bumping. Do the kids still say that? It's been bumping. It's been active, and I've been in there too, mixing it up with my weird username. So please get at us there. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there are any interviews that you'd like to hear, who you'd like us to bring on. The Taylor Kyles episode from a couple of weeks ago got some great reaction. Hopefully this one does as well. But throw us a few suggestions out there, if you please, because we trust you. We love you. We mean that. And we want to try to do right by you, the listener. Exciting times to be a Patriots fan, even after a 20-point loss. It's still pretty exciting right now. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you'll enjoy the Patriots game in London this coming weekend. We'll be right back here on Next Pats next week to talk all about it.